Okay, everyone, we'll get things started. So hello and welcome to the Microdesk webinar series. My name is Laura Guzman. I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at Microdesk. And I want to welcome you to today's session, What's New in 2013, Revit MEP. So for those of you who aren't familiar with us, Microdesk is an Autodesk Gold, Oracle, and Google partner. We provide technology training and consulting solutions for the AEC industry. We have 12 offices located throughout the East and West Coast, with a staff of over 90 consulting and technical specialists. And the new 2013 products that we'll be talking about today, they really have come a long way. So over the next hour, we're excited to be able to help you take a look at just how far the solutions have come for MEP design, and dive into what some of the best new features of Autodesk's Revit MEP 2013 significantly improve integration, collaboration, and interoperability. So presenting today's session, we have with us Microdesk Senior Consultant Don Interdonato. Don is an MEP engineer by trade with experience as an engineer and project manager for numerous new construction, renovation, and sustainable services projects throughout the Northeast, as well as Hawaii. Don specializes in assisting MEP organizations with implementing building information modeling and has expert knowledge of the BIM for MEP engineering technologies we'll be talking about today. So just a few logistics before we begin. In order to minimize any background distractions, you are all on mute for the duration of the session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type those into the question area of the webinar toolbar to the right of your screen, and Don will address those as soon as he can at the end of the presentation. If we do run out of time, we will certainly provide you with our contact information so you can follow up with us, and we'll be able to get back in touch with you and answer any additional questions you may have along the way. All right, well, with that, I will now turn it over to Don to take it away. Don?
Thanks, Laura. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to What's New in Autodesk 2013 Revit MEP. Laura gave you a little bit of background on me. Glad you guys could all make it out and be in here today. It's going to be a really good session. A lot of the new key features that are happening now in Revit MEP, it's really come quite a long way. So with that, let's dive right in. All right, so welcome. Again, the main focus here is the integration, interoperability, and the collaboration that the platform really allows us. All right, and we're going to start talking about some of the key new features. All right, and really a lot of those key new features, one of the big ones now is that Revit is now the new Revit One Box. So Revit Architectural, Structural, and MEP, they're all integrated now into the entire platform. It allows for utilization with all trades and access to tools that simply weren't there previous. Revit system modeling enhancements, there's new and powerful features in there. We're going to be looking at things from pipe and duct routing preferences to extended room calculation delineations to important enhancements. Things that are visually improved, such as pipe leaders and symbology and so forth. So Revit MEP 2013, that's your complete product integration. So as you can see, Revit One Box really gets broken out across the disciplines now. So those key features for architecture and structure, the tools are available. But what we're really going to key in is on Revit systems, a lot of the enhanced modeling tools. We're going to get a really good look at some of those tools in process. And the interoperability, the better integration that's available to us now, and especially the analysis capabilities. It's one of the big things that's improved, and the benefits there are pretty substantial. So we're first going to look at some of the integration from Revit One Box. Just as I was saying before, that access to all those tools from all the different disciplines, And one of the big things now, just jumping into portions of Revit, one box and MEP, especially view templates. So view templates essentially can now be assigned to specific views. So when you're assigning a view template to a view, the view will update automatically now when you change the view template. If the view property is controlled by that view template, the view is pretty much locked to the template. The property is disabled. So you really have the ability to control which properties are now applied in the view templates. You can still choose to do more or less a one-time application of a template's properties to a view, and it's either done through the ribbon or being able to access through a right-click feature in the project browser. You can now duplicate type properties, and for those types, for most of the view types, such as floor plans, the ability is there to choose to associate view templates with a view type. So there's a big differential that's available now, a lot more integration. If there's a template associated with the type, you can choose to make new views of this type, and that's dependent on the template. And view types and templates can be managed now by creating a view list. We now have view options where you can explicitly control the disciplines or which discipline your views are on creation. So in the past where we weren't really able to control that, we'd have to go back and that would be something that we'd decide prior or have to move a whole series of them. The ability is here now to really just set that default view discipline. The discipline is overridden by any view templates that you may be using, but the setting is now in the General tab in the Options dialog. So you can actually go in there and have more flexibility when applying those view templates. So surface transparency slider is one of the big ones too. Anybody out there is familiar with ghost surfaces? Ghost surfaces and transparent override options have now been introduced into the surface transparency slider. So now you can set a surface transparency override between 0 to 100. And you can do that either by the element, you can do it by category, filter, or view. So now it's just not one type of transparency. You really have the the option there to manipulate the model more or less to how you want to see it, to see a lot of the components that are inside of it, especially when it comes down to routing MEP systems on HVAC ductwork and piping, so on and so forth. It just gives us a lot more flexibility when we're presenting the model. To access the surface transparency slider can be done from the graphics display options dialog, or selecting an element, right-clicking on it, and just selecting the override graphics in the view by element. You can do it by category, or again, we can do that by filter. So let's jump into some of the enhanced modeling tools now, specifically some of the updates that are in 2013 that are going to affect more or less the Revit systems as they're created. We can start by looking at some of these enhanced modeling tools as far as so new materials data model. All right, that's some of the properties that are added in there. We also have thermal properties data, and that thermal properties data, we're going to dive into those a little bit more. And some of the big ones coming up especially is symbology. So now the rise drop graphics, the symbology enhancements. New yin-yangs and eyebrow symbols have been added to duct system types. So it's kind of expanding the catalog of how we visually represent a lot of our pipe drops and rises. The graphic symbols used for the yin-yangs will vary based on the shape as shown, as you can see here in the images. Only the round graphic is shown in the rise drop selection dialog box. Moving on to diameter symbol prefixes, something that has been enhanced there. Pipe size prefixes and round duct size prefixes now been added to the mechanical settings. Conduit size prefix setting has also been added to the electrical settings. So the string provided here will be displayed at all of the locations where size for elements is used. It will be before the text rather than following the text, and the default value is blank since the suffix is set as a default. So to copy the suffix to the preview, we can use cut and paste. So some of the big ones that are in here now, especially, are the materials. New materials data has been added to the model. So it's incorporating an extended set of material assets, including appearance plus structural and thermal performance properties, which is huge at this point. And these can be applied to projects in logical combinations for a range of different purposes. An example is appearance for rendering, thermal for whole building energy analysis as well. Thermal properties data has also been added to facilitate easier, faster heating and cooling load calculations, energy analysis, and especially to that GVXML support. So looking at the thermal properties, this is really just breaking this out a little bit further, get a better understanding exactly what we're able to gather out from it. So the thermal properties data, Revit now provides pretty much the ability to add and modify the thermal properties of walls, floors, roofs, windows, and so forth. So in order to facilitate easier and faster, let's say more integrated energy analysis, heating and cooling loads, so assembly of walls, floors, roofs are also, they are treated differently to component glazings and windows. So you can see in the image it provides an overview of the thermal properties data for layered assembly walls. So we can see that in assemblies that breaks us out into the specific layers and what's inside. So you can see there's our R or U values, thermal massing, absorbance right down to roughness, and then just expanding that even further. So as we move further in, we're looking at specific heat capacity, density, conductivity, right through thickness, just the variable parameters that can be added to it. So then this computed, it's given the materials assigned to each individual layer, and especially the layer thickness. So if we break this a little bit further, we can see as this comes out to the individualized components there, we're seeing the R values, solar heat gain coefficient, the visible light transmittance. So the image pretty much gives you an overview of the thermal and solar. Just as I was saying, the properties of that component being the window. You can see that if you note the R value, the solar heat gain coefficient, again, and that light transmittance are set by a lookup from a list of analytic constructions. So thermal data is assigned to an assembly wall or component glazing. The windows using these mechanisms will then be used in subsequent energy analysis, again, heating and cooling load calculations and that GVXML support. And it can be used for third-party analysis applications as well. So pretty much when exporting that to GVXML, you have a couple options where you can choose to export the rooms, include the thermal properties of it, and that thermal data will be derived right from the model. If there's no thermal data that's assigned to the various model objects, no thermal data obviously will be exported to those objects. So when we're choosing to export that information from spaces, by default that analysis properties are generated from the information that you're seeing inside the model elements, and the properties of the analytic construction is used when overrides is selected for missing model information. So any upgraded files also will have an override, which can be checked to provide consistent behavior with 2012. And if no thermal data is assigned to the various model objects, that thermal data from analytical instructions is going to be used. Also for those heating and cooling load reporting and for the calculations, by default, the analysis properties are generated pretty much from information in the model elements, and the properties of the analytic constructions used when overridden is selected or the model information is missing. And again, upgraded files will have the override check to provide consistency behavior with 2012. And if no thermal data is assigned to those various model objects, again, thermal data from the analytical constructions is just going to be used and substituted there. And that just kind of moves us towards the GVXML. So with the GBXML, we now have options to export rooms or spaces from the actual GBXML dialog that's been added. So surfaces are now being combined to adjacent polygons. So criteria for combining the analytical surfaces is that they are coplanar, adjacent, and have the same surface type and originates from the same element. So in a little bit more complex curved curtain systems are pretty much now converted into separate planar faces for each panel mode. In simple complexity mode, those coplanar panels are simply going to be merged together. All right, this is one of the ones that I think is extremely useful because it absolutely gives us more flexibility with the design. As we know, sometimes with the spaces, it's just not being able to, get that space to meet the actual component when we're actually, laying out some systems and we're looking for CFMs and an airflow back to a particular space and how much, air we're delivering. So what it's added now to the families is that we now have a room calculation point. So in some cases, families may be placed, like I was saying, in a way that the location of the connector is not inside the space. So, obviously we're not getting any values reported back. So what we can do now is actually enable and edit that room calculation point inside the families of specific types. And the setting is available for air terminals and lighting fixtures. So we can do this both now for electrical and for mechanical. In the family editor, once we open up that family, we can use the checkbox for the room calculation point, as you can see there in the slide, and that calculation point is now displayed. We can actually grab that calculation point and move it to a point inside the space so we can finally get that read, and then we can update all the the families and types based upon whatever the layout is that we're doing. So that's a pretty useful and powerful tool. Another really great enhancement to this now, really seeing Revit move into more customizable systems from ductwork and piping, is the pipe routing preferences. So what we're pretty much finding now in mechanical settings, it's now been turned into pipe segment objects. So each material and schedule type combination is a unique pipe segment with the connection type now removed. So new materials and schedule types may be created using the duplicate the segments dialog. So the name of the pipe segment designation is automatically generated based on material, connection name, and schedule type. So we simply select really the appropriate button to add a new material, schedule type, or we could do both of those. So we get those options to do it. And the new materials is really added by selecting one of the materials from the browser, so we can still create all any additional materials that we might need. But now we have the the opportunity there to get in and really delineate what we're looking for. And a new schedule type is created by typing just that new name right in the box. So these pipe segments are used in the new routing preference dialog, and that's launched right from pipe type properties. And multiple pipe segments can be added to a routing preference, and multiple fittings may also be added for each part type section. So elbows, transitions, flanges, so on and so forth. And the fittings and segments also can be assigned to specific size ranges. So now we're not just locked into using certain sizes of fittings and having to go back and take a look through the design where things might expand. This can all be done right through the routing preferences. The criteria will be used during the layout of our systems, and when we're creating that size criteria, you can see there you have the options for none, which means the part will never be used, or all means the parts that we have will be always used during that layout. And you pretty much that's under that minimum size and max size, and we're going to actually see this in action in a little bit. If more than one part in the same section satisfies the criteria at a given time during the layout, it's really just going to default to the first one in the list to be used. So the setting the size criteria to none is useful in modifying fittings, after a layout, since there is no option in the properties to only show fittings that are not associated with the current used routing preferences. So you can see here, especially when a fitting is selected from the project, there's a new checkbox displayed in that properties palette called Constrained to Routing Preferences. And that pretty much limits the fittings that are displayed in the properties palette. Give you an example displayed in the image. 2 fittings are listed for elbows with the size criteria set to none, and that 1 elbow again is set to all. So moving right from pipe routing preferences right over to duct routing preferences. Duct fittings have also moved to the routing preferences dialog, and multiple fittings may be added to each part type section. The first fitting in the section is going to be used during that ductwork layout, and the Constrained to Routing Preferences checkbox applies to duct fittings as well. So when checked, the list of fittings in the type selector is filtered, and it shows the fitting contained in the routing preference. So having the ability to assign certain fittings and segments to specific size ranges further enhances the initial customization of our duct system preferences. Enables, obviously, a better duct system selection, and it's decreasing the overall design and layout time, so it's more customizable. You can definitely select which system or systems you want to use for reporting, or you can select system type filter to further refine the systems that you're utilizing. Another great feature that's been added is the Reapplied Type. So the Reapplied Type tool has been added to the ribbon, and that's right next to the Change Type tool. Can be used to update selected pipe or ductwork layouts, as you can see there highlighted, and it's really to match changes made, obviously, in the routing preferences. So it may only be used, though, to reapply the same type to update a run with updated settings and routing preferences. So really, to give an example, a routing preference is modified to use a long radius elbow instead of a short radius elbow, and when the reapplied type is used, that pipe run is updated to use the new long radius elbow as specified. So that change tool is really used to change a run of pipe or duct from one routing preference to another. And Revit is also expanded into pressure loss reporting, so we can actually generate those reports right from the ducted systems. So pressure loss reports, and you can do it from single duct, you can do them for pipe systems, or you can do it for multiple systems. There's a lot of options in there. The reports can be exported, and they can be saved as HTML files or as CSV files. The report tool can be accessed in a number of ways. The command can be accessed from the Analyze tab, also by selecting a system in the model and using the right-click menu. Or you can do it from the system browser in the right-click menu. So just depending on how we launch that, you may go directly to the creation dialog for the report. You might go to a preliminary dialog to select the systems that you want to create the report for. It's kind of like assigning things to the various systems, just depending upon where you're jumping into it. And then you can select which systems that you want to use for the reporting. And you can also use the Select System Type filter, which is there to further refine the systems that are shown. So after you select a system, whether it be a single system, whether you're selecting multiple systems, the duct pipe pressure loss report settings dialog is going to be displayed. That report can be set up in a number of ways by choosing which properties you want to include in the report, as we can see, and which sections of the report to include, whether or not to show, maybe critical paths used, just giving you a lot of different options. And that report format can also be saved for use later, and obsolete report formats can be deleted. So the image that you're seeing here just displays a sample report of a very simple duct system. And we're going to be looking at running through that as well, so you can see this in action. And pressure loss calculations are, really believe they're a value add to Revit MEP. Considering the ability to generate a virtual pressure report prior to field installation. And this goes hand in hand, which we're going to be talking about, which is coming up next, is really the, how ASHRAE has now integrated the duct fitting database in. So we're getting those actual values. So, the numerous benefits there being leveraged to, say, starting with the designer's ability to accurately delineate airflow requirements and duct system construction. And system variables such as flow and noise can further be evaluated and analyzed. So you can see that the benefits really stretch from design right through installation. So it's almost giving you that capability of virtual testing and balancing, and seeing what we're actually getting inside of the system. And as I was saying here, what's been an add-on or an add-in in the past, the ASHRAE duct fitting database has now been adopted into Revit, so it's now an internal part of it. And it's really a building block process. So the latest version, the 5.00.00, from the ASHRAE duct fitting database, that's been implemented now. It's using 78 out of the 235 ASHRAE tables, and those have been updated. So with the new ASHRAE tables, Revit MEP has increased the coverage of duct fitting pressure loss data for the duct fitting. So you can see how that's going to go hand in hand with actually generating accurate pressure loss reports. So again, no longer an add-in. The ASHRAE duct fitting database is now fully integrated into the Revit platform. Improvements here obviously lend to better air distribution and design, and it just goes hand in hand with the previous mentioned pressure loss report capability. Okay, so now actually taking a look at the new features of Revit MEP 2013. What I'm going to do is just bring up a floor plan of the model, and we're going to start taking a look at the pipe routing and duct routing practices. So as I jump into the mechanical settings, you can see here, when I click on the radio button, now we have options for new segments, and we can do these now, creating new materials, the schedule types, material and types, and associating them to the different types of materials that we want to see on each of those piping types that we're creating. So it gives us a lot more flexibility to go further and a bit deeper into the materials for what we want to apply for certain segments. So let's take a look now at the connections, traditional connections that we've had in Revit MEP and what we can do with them now as far as adding in new segments. And you can see here that I've made a connection to the fan coil unit with a 3/4 inch pipe. However, the fan coil unit connections are 5/8 of an inch, so it's defaulting inside of the pipe settings to that 3/4 and then to a 1/2 inch. We're not getting that 5/8 inch which we need when we go to draw a pipe. So what I want to do is now go in and access those pipe preferences, especially for the segments. You can see here I have my copper K. I'm going to go into the edit type, and now we have the routing preferences underneath segments and fittings. So if I click the edit button, I have some options now as far as the segments and sizes, load family as well. I can bring that in. What I want to do now is identify that specific size to add so I can route the 5/8 piping. So let me jump into the segments and sizes. So I can access right now, access through type properties. I'm going to go to my copper K. And once I have the copper K selected, I'm going to go and add that new size, which is going to be that 5/8 of an inch pipe size. Once I get that in, I can also go to the pipe specifications, and I'll add in the inside diameter, and I'll also add in the outside diameter. And then typically we could just use that, if we want to add that in the sizing list or used in sizing, the same applies on the right-hand side. So once I have the 5/8 in, I can now go back. And I can also choose in here, obviously I want to add that as the 5/8 inch size, or I could choose all or none, which would mean that the parts under none would never be used, and all means that the parts will always be used during the layout. So I could set this to 5/8, set this to all right now, and that's how the piping would behave. So now that I have that created, I can select the fan coil unit, right-clicking on the connector and the draw pipe. And now that pipe, you can see up in the options bar, it's giving me that 5/8 of an inch size as desired with all of the settings. And again, being accessed through type properties. And there's my 5/8 inch setting up in the options bar for copper K. So let me zoom out. I'm just going to pan over here to the top of the duct system. All right, now we're going to take a look at the room calculation point. So as I click on that diffuser, I'll scroll down, you can see that I have a flow inside the diffuser that I've specified for 150 CFM. Right, so I've done that for all of the diffusers that are in there. But as I click on the space, let me scroll down here and take a look under the flow, you can see there's the 513 CFM that's calculated for the system, but the actual supply isn't registering the 150 CFM per diffuser. So if I just go over to my load reports, and we just take a look inside of that building summary, you can see that for that particular room, that FCU1, the CFM there is 513 CFM as specified under the calculated load. So as I close out now, I can take advantage of actually getting that 150 CFM per diffuser in by going and editing the room calculation point. So as I edit the family, you can see that there is a tail now, and they're above the diffuser. And after I select the room calculation point, right, it's going to add that tail to it. I can either overwrite the existing there or the parameter value. You also can create other types of diffusers with that calculation point to it, so based upon whatever the criteria is for the project. So what I'm going to do is select all of them, and here's where I have those two different types. All right, and the one below that I'm going to choose from that I've created with a calc point in it, and I'm going to update all of the diffusers, and I'll just turn off all of the flow arrows. And you can see here that I'm going to update my flow to 150 CFM per diffuser. All right, and now we'll just take a look at the section, and we'll see where it'll show that room calculation point dropping in. Let me just expand the section a little bit further. So again, we'll be able to see where the space, where the limits of the space are, and also where the room calculation point is. So now you can see that the tail is dropping in, and the node there is where the room calculation point is set. And if I just hover over the space, we can see that the space, there's the boundaries and the limits of it. So that calculation point is inside, whereas previously we weren't able to maneuver those points. And that applies also to lighting fixtures as well. So the feature is extremely useful when we have different shapes of the rooms where it's a little bit harder to actually to read those settings based upon where we want to see them. So it's another excellent option is the room calculation point. Now this will go hand in hand, especially when we move to looking at pressure loss reports. So as I go to the Analyze tab, you can see that we now have buttons for duct pressure loss report and pipe pressure loss report. So what I'm going to do is generate a report for it. I'm going to choose what systems that I want to include in the reporting. I can choose them all. What I'm going to do is reduce this to just the FCU1. And I'll go to the system type filter, because I could do the exhaust air, return air, and supply at the same time, but I'm just going to do the supply air right now. So I have that set. Click OK. And then I can just choose whichever fields that I want to add to the actual report. So you can see we get some default information in here. And I can also go and click some of the other parameters there to display system information or critical path. But I'm just going to create the report. I'm going to save this report. I can save it as an HTML file. Right, and we can see as it generates that pressure loss report, it gives me the information for the project, for the specific fan coil unit that I'm using. And now you can start seeing all the information coming out of the elements, especially velocities and velocity pressures, are based upon those certain lengths. And we'll also have the detailed information of straight segments in the section. So it's giving me, again, the velocity, the flow, the size, and the fittings and accessory loss coefficient summary by section now is based off that ASHRAE table. And remember, we were talking before, the ASHRAE duct fitting database is now not an add-in. It's part of the Revit package. So we're getting 78 out of those 235 ASHRAE tables, which have been updated. And that information now lives and resides inside of Revit MEP as opposed to an add-on. So those are some of the new features as we've seen. And just giving you a little bit of a rundown to some of those there. Just want to really recap some of the key features here. Those being, that more complete product integration, a lot more extended modeling tools, and especially enhanced information modeling. Again, just recapping some of those features that we were looking at, I think that you're going to find a real value add benefit to those systems, especially laying out piping systems, customizing those piping systems more or less to realizing the designs that you're trying to put together, not having to go through a lot of legwork to actually get these systems itemized, and especially going to the HVAC side, just really bringing it, making it more organic, where you can now generate a lot more information by being able to take those connectors and moving that calculation point into the room, and getting a better airflow or a GPM through your piping systems, and then being able to produce those those pressure loss reporting. So I think you're going to find that there's a lot of fantastic key features there inside of Revit MEP, and I'm really excited about everybody having the opportunity to dig in and get better realization out of their designs. So with that, I can open this up to any questions that anybody might have. You guys can put those through. We'll field those questions and get them answered.
Great, thanks, Don. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to type those into the question area down at the bottom of the screen. And I know we had one question come in during the session about whether this will be available online anywhere. And yes, we'll provide a copy of the recording, and it will be located on our website on the multimedia page. And you can view all this content again there. Also, for the section there that we weren't able to take a look at, sorry again for the technical difficulties, but we can post a recording of that as well if people are interested in seeing some of this in action as well.
Absolutely.
All right, so Don, if we have any, I have a couple questions here for you if you're ready.
Sure.
All right, well, first one is regarding Revit One Box. So you alluded to One Box a few times in the very beginning, and I just wanted to clarify, does that mean access to all the Revit solutions in for the other disciplines?
Yes, it does. They are available, and they actually can be turned on and off inside of Revit. So if there's certain things that if there's architectural tools that you might need, especially if you're I guess maybe creating maybe a renovation or something like that, or you just have a design and you got to throw a couple walls in there. I mean, you have the ability to do that. Same thing with structure, and they're all available right there, and you can customize which ones you see and which ones you don't.
Great. Okay, we had another question. This one in regards to thermal properties. So can those thermal properties be read through links?
Be read through links. The ability now to get that information, that kind of leads to the whole One Box solution is it's making that available now, so that information can be read. So that's the whole idea, is that we can actually build up all that the information in there. We can read it out, and then that can be applied to those heating and cooling load calculations, especially when we're moving towards sustainable LEED solutions. That's the whole idea behind that is having more of that information at our fingertips now.
Great. All right, and in regards to the electrical updates, could you kind of do a quick summary of what some of those changes were this year?
Okay, on the electrical side, you're going to see that the room, especially with those room calculation points, that was one of the big ones. So you have the ability to move that lighting, that calc point from the lights into the spaces. So that's going to read, all your IES files, any of the information you have in the lighting, be able to transfer that over into the spaces and do more analysis on it. You're also going to see some of those, the visual characteristics. So for like conduit, you'll see some of that, that information migrating over. And then also, you'll find there's going to be some more enhancements in the electrical settings, just like we were seeing in the mechanical and the pipe settings. So a lot more of it, I think, electrically will come based on analysis, and the routing. I think we're going to see as we move into the future more options for conduit routing and preferences. But right now for this release, it's been more towards the mechanical and the plumbing side.
Okay, great. I mean, even so, there are a lot of exciting updates in this edition this year. I don't know, Don, what's your favorite?
I really a huge fan of the fact that the analysis properties. It's just been so much further enhanced. It's really moving it towards really a better solution. Everybody's been looking for this to happen. A lot of these key features are now happening there. And especially the preferences, couple that with being able to delineate your systems a lot better. And now you're starting to be able to customize, how we, lay out and model a lot of these different pipe systems and duct systems. I just think it's pretty fantastic because it's really going to reduce, time spent going back and tooling around and trying to fix some of the things that we couldn't really do before. I think you're just going to see you're going to get more time back. You get a better return on investment there. So that's my thoughts.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions we have at this point in the system today. But like I said, everyone, if you have any additional questions after the fact, if you want to go back and take a look at the recording of this session, feel free to reach out to us and let us know. We'd be happy to help you out. So the email address there on the screen, webinars@microdesk.com, is one way to get a hold of us. All right, and I want to thank you again, Don, and thanks for everyone thanks for attending today's session. We really do hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, again, you can reach out to us at the webinars@microdesk.com or any of the contact info there. So our 800 number and our main info email address is available for you there on the screen. If you want to learn more about the Autodesk 2013 solution specifically and how to get started, you can access that page listed on the screen there right now, microdesk.com/products/Autodesk-2013. And again, thank you. We hope you enjoyed the session, and we look forward to seeing you again at future sessions. Have a great day.